When the county posted a bright orange notice on the gate of Mark Harrison's farm, nobody thought twice about it. The sign read, "Property declared abandoned. County acquisition in process." Most people assumed the old farmer had finally given up. After all, Mark was 68 years old. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier. His children lived hundreds of miles away. And his 120-acre farm sat at the edge of town, looking quieter with every passing season. But what county officials didn't know was that 40 feet beneath that land rested a forgotten water contract worth millions of dollars. A contract signed nearly 80 years earlier. A contract that would eventually destroy their entire plan. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was already too late. The town of Oak Ridge had changed dramatically. Where cornfields once stretched across the horizon, developers now built shopping centers and luxury neighborhoods. Land prices were rising every year. And Mark's farm occupied one of the most valuable locations in the county. A new highway expansion was scheduled nearby. Investors were circling. Developers were making offers. But Mark refused every one of them. To outsiders, it didn't make sense. The farmhouse was old. The barns needed repairs. And much of the land appeared unused. But to Mark, the farm wasn't just property. It was family history. His grandfather had purchased it in 1947 after returning from the war. His father had expanded it. And Mark had spent his entire life working that soil. Selling it felt like erasing generations of sacrifice. So whenever another developer appeared at his door with a briefcase and a smile, Mark gave the same answer. No. One afternoon, county officials held a closed-door planning meeting. A private development company wanted thousands of acres for a massive residential project. The project promised jobs, tax revenue, and political advantages. There was just one obstacle. Mark's farm. Without his land, the entire design had to be altered. The developers tried negotiating. They increased their offers. They sent consultants, lawyers, real estate specialists. Nothing worked. Mark wouldn't budge. Then someone noticed something interesting. Property inspections showed limited farming activity. Tax records suggested portions of the land weren't being actively cultivated. The farmhouse looked increasingly vacant. Suddenly a new strategy emerged. Instead of buying the property, what if they declared it abandoned? The process wasn't simple. But with enough paperwork and enough assumptions, it might work. And that's exactly what they attempted. Mark first saw the notice on a cold Tuesday morning. He stared at it silently. Then read it again. And again. Declared abandoned. He lived there. Worked there. Maintained it. How could anyone claim otherwise? He immediately drove to the county office. Inside, he was treated like an inconvenience. Clerks shuffled papers. Officials avoided eye contact. Nobody gave direct answers. One supervisor simply said, "If the property appears inactive, procedures must be followed." Mark left frustrated. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. That evening he sat at his kitchen table reviewing old records. Tax receipts. Utility bills. Insurance documents. Everything proving ownership. Then his eyes landed on an old wooden box. A box his father had told him never to throw away. Inside were yellowed papers dating back decades. Mark almost ignored them. But one document changed everything. The paper looked ancient. Its edges were brittle. Its ink faded. Yet the words remained readable. In 1948, Mark's grandfather had signed a legal agreement with the state water authority. At the time, engineers discovered an unusually large underground aquifer beneath the property. The agreement granted exclusive extraction rights and long-term access protections. Most importantly, the contract prohibited any transfer, seizure, redevelopment, or structural alteration of the land without a comprehensive state-level water review. In simple terms, Nobody could legally take the property without addressing the water rights first. And nobody had. Not once. Mark immediately contacted an attorney. The attorney reviewed the document. Then reviewed it again. Then smiled. "Mark," he said, "this changes everything." A formal challenge was filed. County officials initially dismissed it. They assumed the contract was outdated. Expired. Irrelevant. But when state lawyers became involved, the situation escalated quickly. Historical archives were searched. Engineering reports resurfaced. Survey maps were examined. And the findings shocked everyone. The aquifer wasn't small. It was enormous. Experts estimated it supplied significant groundwater reserves across multiple districts. Suddenly the farm wasn't just farmland. It was strategically important infrastructure. State agencies launched reviews. Environmental regulators demanded answers. Questions multiplied. Why hadn't the county disclosed the water rights? Who reviewed the acquisition process? Had officials ignored critical records? The investigation expanded. And county leaders began getting nervous. Local newspapers picked up the story. Then regional television stations. Soon everyone was talking about it. Residents who once believed Mark was a stubborn old farmer started seeing him differently. Community members attended public meetings. Citizens requested records. Reporters uncovered internal emails. Several messages suggested officials were more focused on development opportunities than proper legal review. Public trust began collapsing. At one town hall meeting, a resident stood up and asked, "If they can try this with Mark's farm, what's stopping them from trying it with anyone else's property?" The room erupted in applause. County leaders suddenly found themselves defending decisions they could no longer justify. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the back rows. Residents filled every seat. Mark sat quietly beside his attorney. Across the room sat county representatives and lawyers. For days, evidence was presented. Documents. Maps. Contracts. Expert testimony. The county argued procedural authority. Mark's team argued property rights and contractual obligations. Then came the turning point. A hydrogeology expert displayed detailed maps showing the underground aquifer. The judge listened carefully. The courtroom fell silent. The expert explained that disturbing the land without proper review could impact water resources relied upon by surrounding communities. The issue was no longer just ownership. It was public interest. The county's position weakened dramatically. Everyone could see it. Even their own attorneys. 3 months later, the ruling arrived. The judge rejected the abandonment declaration. The acquisition process was invalidated. The county was ordered to reimburse legal expenses. Additional reviews were mandated regarding administrative conduct. The courtroom exploded with reaction. Mark simply nodded. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't seeking revenge. He was protecting what his family built. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward him. One asked, "How does it feel to win?" Mark paused. Then answered quietly, "It isn't about winning. It's about remembering that some things belong to more than paperwork." Most people assumed the story ended there. But it didn't. The state later negotiated a conservation agreement with Mark. Instead of selling the land for development, portions of the property became protected groundwater preservation areas. The arrangement generated stable income, protected local water resources, and ensured the farm remained in family hands. Even more surprising, several neighboring landowners discovered similar forgotten agreements hidden within old property records. The county was forced to review numerous past decisions. Policies changed. Oversight increased. And officials became far more careful when dealing with private property rights. All because one farmer opened an old wooden box. The county thought they were dealing with an aging farmer standing alone against progress. What they failed to understand was that history leaves fingerprints. Sometimes those fingerprints are buried inside dusty records. Sometimes they're hidden beneath generations of forgotten paperwork. And sometimes they're buried 40 feet underground, waiting for someone to remember they exist. Because in the end, Mark Harrison didn't save his farm with money. He saved it with something far more powerful. A promise written on paper nearly 80 years earlier. A promise everyone else had forgotten.